Welcome back to the Full Court Press, and today we have a guest on the show, and honestly, one of my favorite things, since covering sports here in the Valley is not so much the covering like Utah State and high school, like those are obviously fun, but I love being able to talk to people in the community, their sports stories. I've had several great opportunities. This is another one of those where it's not this mainstream sports, but it's just such a fun story to talk about. We have Ella Budge on with us, and she was, I believe, in July, won the World Jump Rope Championship I forget what the name of the event was. Here, help me out.
The International Jump Rope Union. It was the World Championships held in Colorado Springs, Colorado.
Okay, so that's the official title. So, Ella Budge, we have a world champion on our show. We don't get to say that very often. I guess just kind of introduce us a little bit to I guess the world of jump roping championships and a little bit about, how this went about.
So I've been jump roping for almost 14 years now with a local team called Just Jump In. I've been competing nationally and regionally for at least 10 years of those. And as I've gotten older, I've been able to jump with other athletes from around the nation, and we've kind of got together and started our own team. And we're really passionate about jump rope, so we really make the time to practice together. And this year we found out that Worlds was going to be held in the United States, which makes it really cheap for us, so we don't have to travel across the globe. But we put all our efforts into qualifying for that. So we went to qualifying tournaments in the nation where you had to film a video, and you got one shot, you submitted it, and then you had to be top 3 in the nation to compete on Team USA in that event. So then when we went to Worlds, you have the preliminary rounds where you compete your event, and then if you're top 6 in the world, you recompete that event at the last 2 days of the competition at the Grand World Championships. And I had the opportunity to compete in not one but 2 events. They're called Wheel Pairs and Double Dutch Triad. And I was able to take second in my Double Dutch Triad and first in the world in my Wheel Pairs.
So you got gold and silver.
I did.
Woo, there you go.
Awesome.
Not just world champion, but second in another area.
Yeah.
As well. So
Okay, so you competed in multiple events. Like how different are the different events? Are there some similarities between the two? You're not alone. You've got a partner. What's that like? Just kind of describe to us, the uninitiated, the differences are in some of those competitions.
Yeah, so there are 2 kind of sort of categories in jump rope. There's speed events and freestyle events. So speed events is you're jumping as fast as you can, alternating your feet in a certain amount of time, whether that's 30 seconds or 3 minutes, and they're counting. So people in 30 seconds are getting like 250 jumps, which is insanely fast.
Makes me tired just thinking about it.
It's so crazy. And you do that as a single rope by yourself. You do that in double dutch, and then you move over into the freestyle categories, which is what I competed in. And you have certain required elements where you have to have a certain amount of multiples, power gymnastic skills, wraps where the rope's wrapping around your body, or releases where you're releasing the handle and catching it under your leg or behind your back. And you also have to have, why am I blanking? Something else. It's all crazy stuff. But then you do that with a single rope by yourself. You do that with a single rope with 4 people where you have to be in sync. You have to do, there's double dutch events where there are 3 of you, 4 of you, 5 of you. And they're all like, so in like gymnastics or in track where there are different events, all different sort of skills or different categories. Jump rope is in a similar layout where there are tons of different events that you can compete in.
So I guess just tell us about these specific categories. Like what goes into, you said the wheel pairs?
Wheel pairs.
Wheel pairs. I guess what's kind of going into that? So you're working with a partner, I think his name was Seth?
Mm-hmm, Seth Ingram.
So I guess just tell us a little bit about that kind of specific event, like what, obviously you told us there's a lot of different things with these different categories, but what kind of specifically goes into that category there?
I would say wheel pairs is one of the most unique events of all of them. So you each have your own rope, and you swap handles in the middle. So I'm controlling half of my rope, and he's controlling half of my rope, and I'm controlling half of his rope, and he's controlling half of his own rope. And you're having to stay in perfect sync and know the timing of your partner's movements for it to work perfectly. This is an event that we, in the last 2 years, have trained really hard together because it is so difficult and different than the rest of the events that jump rope has. But it's nice because it is such an open slate for creativity and learning like some different skills that people have never seen before.
How do you go about that process of choosing your partner? Is he someone from around here? Did you just meet him through other competitions? I mean, what was that process like?
So Seth grew up in Idaho, and I knew him competing growing up because he competed against my older brother. He's always been a really, really talented athlete, and he moved to Utah State to come do school here. And he started coming to Just Jumpin's practices just to, get out there and jump rope because we're obsessed and we can't leave it alone. So he was coming to practices, and I told him, I was like, I would love to compete with you if you want us to keep competing. And that's where we kind of started. And there are a few other jumpers that grew up with me on Just Jumpin', or we even have a jumper from Montana who is at Utah State who also came in and joined us, and we made this little team of ragtag jumpers where we all just wanted to keep competing and growing the sport of jump rope. So we all got together, and that's how our little team formed.
So how did you just, initially get into jump rope? It says you've been doing this 14 years, most of your life. So where did that first step come in where you're first, everyone's introduced to a jump rope at some point in their life, but like for me, I eventually stopped doing it. Others don't, obviously. You kept doing it. Like, what got you into and staying into this hobby of yours?
I was really lucky and really fortunate to attend an elementary school where they taught after-school workshops at River Heights Elementary here in Logan. And my PE teacher handed me a flyer after class one day, and I went one time, and I was hooked, and I haven't stopped going. It's seriously so fun, and I could go on and on about how obsessed I am with jump rope.
Well, I was going to key in on that. I know that, because I've had kids go through the River Heights system, and so I know they're very passionate about jump roping. But this jump or just jumping, you've mentioned this a few times. This is an organization here in the Valley that's introduced kids to jump ropes, competition. I mean, it's a sport. It is a legit sport, and for people who may have attended a Utah State basketball game or sometimes some of the other high school events, these kids go and perform halftimes and showcase some of their skills and things like that. What was that like for you to be able to showcase some of the things you've been learning and get that first taste of like, I'm performing in front of a lot of people?
Man, I remember the first time I ever performed a halftime when I was like 8 years old was at don't hate me, it was at a BYU men's volleyball. Isn't that crazy?
There you go.
And I just remember the feeling of walking out on that floor and seeing so many people and them just absolutely loving what you're doing as much as you love doing it. And it was just so inspiring and really drove me to continue with the sport. And I still love performing so much. And it's probably what keeps me going now is being able to walk out onto the floor and give everything I've got and to share and spread the sport of jump rope and just inspire others.
I know it's, obviously I've been to some of these halftime shows, and the crowd really does get into like, what's it like, when there's a particularly difficult trick and the audience can tell that, and usually they explode. As far as like, what's that excitement like, and is it hard to not mess up after you pull something like that off?
It's an unreal feeling, and I think half the time I kind of tune it out. I'm really focused on like the counts and the music and the form of the trick. But I know when we hit a really, really difficult skill and the crowd erupts, I think it just provides us more energy to keep going and to push through. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting, but it's so fun.
How does your body hold up through that, for the training and the performing? Because that looks like I'm watching and my shins start to hurt, my knees, the bottom of my feet, just watching you guys, how you perform and move around. To us, it looks amazing, but I know for you, it's got to be the pain tolerance level. It's got to be high.
Yeah, there's a lot of stress injuries that come with jump rope. You don't see a ton of broken bones unless it's from like bad gymnastic skills, gone wrong. But lots of stress injuries. I have personally had like impingement syndrome in my shoulder, or a lot of people have a lot of knee and ankle injuries. But it's just funny because you just love to jump so much that you just put it behind you and you keep pushing because it's so fun. And I mean, we are big advocates on taking care of yourselves, but you know your limits, and if you can push, we just keep going.
Well, I'm sure it's like much any other sport. There's certain training you can do to build up strength and tolerance in certain areas of your body for whatever you're competing in. I'm sure it's got to be the same for jump rope.
Absolutely.
So is that mainly just, I guess calves are a big thing there, ankles, wrists, shoulders you mentioned?
Yeah, I would say, biggest things, we need good ankles because you're moving around so much that your ankles, they can't give out. It's like when you're moving quickly in basketball, and a lot of people like roll their ankles. It's similar in that where you're moving, you're jumping, you're flipping, you're rotating around multiple times, and it's definitely a risk. So you just have to, I mean, I definitely do train my ankles now that I'm getting old. I stretch and I take care of myself a little bit better because it starts to hurt a little bit more.
Well, it's worse because once you get the first ankle injury, then the second one happens, then the third and the 18th.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, you are not old, but is this the sport that's kind of like gymnastics where athletes peak at a really young age, and the older you get, it's a little bit more challenging to do some of the same tricks and stunts?
I would definitely say so. It's kind of one of those things where you're going to hit a peak, but jump rope never has to go away in your lifetime. I know jump ropers that are still spreading the sport through performances, and I mean, like, I work with a guy who's 40 years old and still does jump rope performances and still does pretty difficult skills, and I'm like, that's exactly how I'm trying to be. But you definitely, for competing, you kind of have a peak where you're at the most athletic stage of your life,
So I guess you kind of awaken a morbid fascination or a thought where it's like, minor injuries and stuff. I guess the jump rope can be pretty dangerous itself if you mess up.
Yes.
Like, how many times have you smacked yourself really hard with a jump rope?
More times than I can even express to you. I mean, just last week, you want to be able to keep growing and trying new skills, and with that, you're gonna whip yourself a lot, and it welts, you leaves a mark for days. Like, I whipped my eye the other day and went to school the next day, and my face has a red whip across my face. But it's just kind of, it's normal, for the sport.
Again, we're talking to Ella Budge. She's a world jump rope champion, and I want to ask you about the competition you went to in Colorado Springs this summer. Mm-hmm. Is this? I mean, there are some sports where there's an element of you're trying to beat a clock, and so whoever is the fastest, they're going to be the winners. Whoever scores more points than the other guys, they're going to be the winners. But there's also some sports where there's a little bit more subjectivity to it. Gymnastics has some elements to that. Certainly, figure skating as well. There are technical aspects that are judged, and you have to be able to pull off these certain things. But how does that blend with jump rope competitions? You've already detailed how fast you can jump in a certain amount of time, but what's kind of the artistic element of it, but also the very technical aspect of your competitions?
So I would say speed is definitely the more technical side. There's no judging other than counting. But for freestyle, you're definitely you're judged based on the difficulty of the tricks. So they're watching how many times the rope is rotating under you in a jump. Is your arm restricted under your leg or behind your back? Are you releasing it and catching it restricted? How many times is it wrapped around your body? But on top of that, they're judging, is it matching the music? Is your form good? Are you performing? Are you looking like you're having a good time and entertaining. So if you're doing really difficult skills, sometimes your presentation score goes lower because you're completing this really difficult skill, but you're landing curled up in a ball on the floor because it went under you 5 times and you restricted your arms 4 times. Like, so it's kind of like you have to give and choose and work on what is going to not only look best, but score the highest difficulty score.
So I guess with these, freestyle, so I've asked, gymnasts, because they'll have their routines and all these other sports that have, like, designed routines. How do you kind of come up with that? I mean, I guess you've got a list of tricks that you know and all that, but, like, how do you put it all together in this creative process? And then it's also the music, so you got to consider that as well.
It's, I think, such a unique process for everyone. I know for me personally, I like to kind of pick out my music first, feel around where, like, the really dynamic parts of the song is and where, like, you could do a really big trick and score really high on musicality and presentation. But we kind of just start by playing around and seeing, like, what is something no one's ever seen before but also has really difficult skills in it. So we'll just kind of get together and be like, can you do this in a toad while I'm backwards, crossing behind my knees, jumping in a double under, right? It's stuff like that where it's like, it's trial and error, really. You have to try it over and over, and then hopefully you can figure out a solution, and if not, you just move past it and try something new.
Choosing the right music is important too, I would imagine. So
absolutely.
Do you just pick a song that you think has a certain type of rhythm to it, recognizability, and then you kind of build your show around that? Yeah,
for sure. I think kind of depending on the event, you kind of want to choose a certain tempo, something that's not too fast or too slow for Double Dutch. But I try to choose really high, upbeat music, something that gives me motivated to keep pushing through and, like, gives me energy to, like, give 110% every time. But it's fun to find really unique music that no one's ever heard before to go with the routine because it just really catches their attention.
So I want to ask just about the championship specifically. I guess, what was your feeling like? I guess there was a final round. I mean, I don't know the full how ins and outs of the competition. Imagine there's this final round, do the routine, announcing the winners. Just kind of walk us through that final process. Right up until you realize you are now world champion.
So the way that Grand Worlds works is they're going to have the top 6 in the world recompete their event. So they put it in order of the way that you scored in preliminary. So if you scored 6th, you go first. So you perform your routine, you finish, you walk off the floor, and they have something called the winner's circle where you sit on a couch. And then within like a minute, they're going to broadcast your score on the screen. So then the next routine will go on, same thing will happen, they'll broadcast their score on the screen. The third routine will go on, they'll broadcast their score on the routine. When the fourth routine goes on the floor, they're going to broadcast their score on the screen, and whoever they beat out of top 3 has to leave the floor. So it's really kind of scary, and it's like your heart is racing, and you're just crossing your fingers, and it's hard because this sport is so supportive, and everyone just wants everyone to do well, but also you don't want to get kicked out of your spot. So you're watching them perform. You're sitting on the couch 10 feet away from the people performing on the floor, and you're like cheering for them, but you're also like, oh, please say that my routine was harder or we scored better. It's so hard. And so for my wheel pairs, when we went on the floor, we actually got second. So we went second to last. And we went out and we hit a clean routine, which is a really, really big deal in jump rope, having no mistakes. So we walked to the winner's circle, and we sat down on the couch. We're drinking water, and the lady says, please turn your attention to the leaderboard. So we look up, and we take first place with a pretty wide margin. We're beating second place by at least 5 points, which is quite a bit. You usually win by like 0.6 or 7.
You're usually winning by
or
decimals.
Like maybe 1. Yeah. So we were sitting pretty good, but we still had the group that beat us in prelims going on after us. So I'm sitting on the couch, and I'm so antsy. I'm so anxious. I'm like messing with our ropes, tying them, and Sept turns to me and he goes, calm down. He's like, stop being so antsy. It's okay. So we watch their routine. They come off the floor. And the lady's voice comes on the intercom and says, please turn your attention to the leaderboard. And they took fourth. So we didn't move.
Wow.
And it was such an unreal, unforgettable moment for me. Like sitting there realizing that I'm a grand world champion, and it's something that I've worked for my whole life, you know? Such a rewarding feeling. And then we were one of, I think, 3 groups on Team USA that won first. And so being able to stand up there and listen to the national anthem and represent your country was such an amazing moment.
So what's next? I mean, what happens? Do you go on a world tour? I mean,
Maybe.
Do you have opportunities to perform with other people again? But are there still competitions that take place, or is it now we got to start preparations for next year?
So, Worlds happens every other year. They've announced that it is in Japan in 2025. Yes, 2025. So, me and my teammates are kind of wanting to try for that. So we're going to train and practice. But as far as what's next, I actually am jump roping in a circus tour for Cirque du Soleil this
very
winter.
cool.
So I'll be jumping in the holidays show. I'm headed, I think, northeast. So I'll be in New York, New Jersey, Washington, D.C. And then stuff after that, me and my friends are planning on moving to Vegas and trying to take on performance jump rope full time, which should be really fun.
Sounds really, I guess, how does the Cirque du Soleil come about? Is that just they call you up after, hey, we heard you were a world champion. You want to come perform?
It's kind of just who you know, Jump rope is usually in this circus show every year. They've been in this show for at least 10 years. And I've had friends that I've jumped with who have done it multiple times. So it's kind of like, hey, we want to do your show again. We also have a friend who is willing to join the show. And so I got in that way, which was super lucky. And I am so fortunate, but I'm ecstatic about it. I just keep thinking, I'm like, 2 more months, and I'm on tour. So
There you go. So you are going on tour.
yeah, I am going on tour.
Very cool. That's awesome. Well, we're so excited to be able to share your story and your success.
Thank you.
For those, because I know there are still opportunities for people who are curious about the sport to get involved, because it's a pretty good organization.
Yes, absolutely.
That introduces youth to the sport and non really kids. I mean, you're not a kid anymore, but I mean, there are opportunities for people to get involved. You don't have to be super young to start.
No,
there are
absolutely
opportunities for
not.
other people to get involved too, right?
Yeah. I mean, the organization for the U.S. is called AMJRF, the American Jump Rope Federation, and they are so willing to help you start up a team, find a team, be able to start jump roping, and I would recommend jump rope to anyone and everyone because I think it's so fun, but it's also so healthy for you, heart healthy, and I really just would recommend that no matter how old you are, how young you are, to just try jump rope.
We go to the gym and start jump ropes. All right, world champion. World champion.
That's right.
Got a long way to go. But thank you so much for coming on, having a chance to share your sport. I know it's, we like to talk about football and basketball. So I love being able to have these chances to tell people's stories because they need to be told. It's one of my favorite things. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. I had a blast.
Yeah.